Guys, by the end of this video, you might arrive at one of two conclusions. Either that I'm having a brain fart, which is probably more like it, or that Armageddon was a good movie. The one with Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis. Except the problem is, an asteroid which has a nuke detonated at its core, it's probably not going to be split in two. It's probably going to get vaporized, right? We often hear from scientists and astronomers. I honestly just feel like they are spouting out the propaganda. They just spouting out the propaganda they have been told to. Bro, we need kinetic impactors, bro. We need kinetic impactors to deflect asteroids, bro. Nukes are ineffective, bro. They just want to tax the shit out of us in order to make new stuff which doesn't even need to be made. Um, one of the common arguments which are made is the primary method with which nukes cause damage is via a shockwave. If you create a nuclear explosion in space, it's not going to have that same shockwave effect. Except that's a sort of wrong way to think about it, and I'll get to why. But first of all, let me tell you that the common concern that these people talk about is how there's going to be radioactive fallout. Except with hydrogen weapons, you don't really have that amount of fallout. Hydrogen weapons, the ones that fuse tritium and shit, they don't create a lot of fallout. Only the limited amount of fallout from the tiny plutonium core or uranium-238 core, which is used for setting off the trigger event, right? It's not much. And secondly, if you detonate it in space, if it's detonated in space, then it's probably going to spread out over a huge area. It's not like it's going to be concentrated like Chernobyl or those other nuclear plant accidents. It's not going to be concentrated like that. It's going to be spread out over a huge area, and it's probably not going to be enough to the point it's going to change the background radiation levels. And secondly, these people always talk about how the asteroid is going to be fragmented. It's going to create those fragments, and that's simply not what's going to happen. This is the Storax Sedan explosion, and this is the crater. The crater is quite literally the size of Apophis. If this shit was done to Apophis, then the whole thing was going to be turned into dust. This is what Apophis would look like from space after it's exploded. We don't need kinetic impactors for it. And yeah, this exactly brings me to the next topic, the shock wave. If you drill into the asteroid, then it's technically no longer an explosion in space. The material of the asteroid itself is going to act as a medium for the propagation of the shockwave. The medium itself is going to act as a shockwave medium, and the shockwave is going to flow throughout the asteroid. There is going to be not even anything that's going to damp it out, which would limit the area of the explosion. It would just pass straight through the asteroid at full force. It wouldn't be dampened by anything else like bedrock or something like that. Like in this case, you had the bedrock dampening the force of the shockwave. With that asteroid, you would not have anything, because outside of that, there's just space. It would flow through it in full force. I just think these people want to tax the shit out of us and fearmonger the shit out of us, so we can just pay for their vacations. This is probably me just having a brain fart. But again, the common concerns these people talk about: it's going to fragment, it's going to create nuclear fallout, it's going to be an explosion in space which has no medium for shockwave. They don't even seem like they're correct. At least it's going to provide a sort of partial medium at the very least. And the fragments are simply not going to be large enough to the point they wouldn't burn out in space. As long as it's a relatively small asteroid, even a small nuclear weapon is going to do the trick. I don't think like all of these concerns are genuine, but they just want to extract even more money from us by telling us that the current methods don't work. While the current methods completely do work, they have already done this. Industrialization has always had this effect. They'll tell you that machines are going to ease out your work, but what happens when machines eventually roll out? They create knives which dull after like 5 cuts. They create shoes which don't last for 6 months. They create refrigerators which have plastic everywhere. Like everything is mechanized, everything is modernized, but nothing seems to work or last for a longer while than it did in the past. I think it's the same with this whole space defense thing as well. The current methods we do have for protecting Earth from space rocks probably do work perfectly fine, but they want us to pay for their, pay for their new experiments. The money is probably not going to be required for those experiments anyway.